Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Move Crush Count. I am your host, Scott Joseph. Thrilled to have a special guest with us today, the real deal, Stephanie Riel. And just so we don't confuse, for those of you just listening, Riel is not spelled R-E-A-L. It's R-I-E-L. But we still spell the word deal the correct way. Maybe it's spelled incorrectly. I don't know. So it could be. All right. So this episode is proudly sponsored by J&O Marketing, the digital and direct marketing agency that helps you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. More importantly, I want you to visit jnomarketing.com today so you can learn how their innovative approach will help you outsmart your toughest competitors so you don't have to outspend them. Stephanie has an extraordinary amount of brand experience. She's a brand strategist, marketing consultant. She is the founder of the RielDeal Brands. What I like about her is she's proven that following the traditional playbook isn't always the best strategy. And we're going to talk about some of those different ways and what to avoid, and more importantly, what to move into. So why marketing isn't one size fits all. More importantly, and I make this mistake. I look at all these big brands out there, and I'm a big believer in, wow, this is very successful for them. I'm going to try and see if I can integrate that into what I do. And she's going to talk to us about why that isn't always the best thing for you. So welcome, everyone. I want to bring to the stage Stephanie Riel. Welcome to Move Crush Count. You ready to dive in?
I am. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Listen, you are, as I told you before we brought on here, you're my first interview back from an extended vacation over in Italy. And it sounds like, I guess that's your home. You're Italian.
I'm part Italian and part German, but I definitely, I love, Italy is such a special place. So if only we knew we could have had Prosecco today,
Oh, yes. and if let me tell you, I am Lebanese and I am German Irish. So half Lebanese, half German Irish. For a non-Italian person, all right, I get confused. Italians won't confuse me as Italian, but a non-Italian person with my mix, Lebanese plus German plus Irish equals Italian. That's the way it looks for the common person out there.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
So
the untrained eye, they don't know.
Correct. All right, you ready to dive in?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. So share with us a little bit about your journey as a brand strategist, marketing consultant.
Yeah.
When did you discover that this one size fits all approach doesn't necessarily work, or it's not the best strategy?
Yeah, I think so often I started my first business at the age of 22 and really had no idea what I was doing in so many ways, but I've always found so much value from learning on the fly and learning by doing. So in that first business, which ended up being a full service marketing agency for small businesses at the time, and when that business was in existence, I worked with a lot of different kind of companies. And, I think so often, even some of that programming we get from society of, oh, check this box or follow this and, this leads to success or happiness. A lot of that just doesn't work, does it? And I think same thing for businesses. And what I found really early on, I have a background in all things digital marketing. So when I think of branding, the brand is that heartbeat or that human piece of your business, but it's deployed into any digital or any other marketing channel that you have. It's that consistency. It's that heart of the business. And so I found really early on from running those campaigns that, following what maybe a big brand was doing or even a competitor wasn't always the right thing for that business and who truly their ideal customer is, because that's what we do this marketing thing for, right? Is for our ideal customer, regardless of if you're selling home products or you're in professional services or you have a luxury perfume brand, whatever your business or your area of industry might be, you're building a better product, a better widget, a better access point, a better service for your customer. And maybe it's a void that you saw in the marketplace. And so I think really to answer and sum up 14 years of experience into one simple, succinct piece, it's our customer and what they need is so unique and different. What works for a huge brand, even if it's loved by the masses, might not work for you, and it might not work for your business or your audience either.
We have a frequent listener, watcher, whatever. I don't know if he watches more or listens more. I think he watches, named Michael Porro. And he often says, and I love what you just said there. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because his tagline, he's got a car dealership in Honda World here in Louisville, Kentucky. His tagline is, "We do it your way."
Yeah.
And the reason for that is there are so many different ways that people can purchase today. Doesn't matter if it's an automobile or it doesn't matter anymore. You can do it online. You can research online. You can go in stores. And, you know, he just believes simple gets done and simple is best. So he just communicates it that way. But I got to ask you something. So we're talking branding here a little bit. And when you were answering that question, it got me thinking. And I went back into my history. And I could remember promoting, this is prior to digital marketing. All right. This is, you either had your institutional type marketing, right? Which television, radio, there was some newspaper out there. And then if you really wanted to be direct, it was probably going to be either phone or direct mail.
Yeah.
And I used to teach, and it was very important. I thought that if you weren't doing a high percentage of at least 50% of your marketing budget or advertising budget towards direct response, trying to get a lead, that you were wasting a lot of money. And I still believe that. However, digital marketing makes it so much easier to get, you know, a direct response. You're engaged, you're interacting, plus you can measure it instantly. You're not waiting for a month or a quarter to end to see the performance.
Yeah.
And with so many businesses out there now doing, whether they realize it or not, a direct response marketing, right?
Yeah.
To me, maybe I'm just mistaken by this, but I just feel like the branding, it's always been important, but I feel like it's become even more important now than it was then, because you got to differentiate yourself from everybody else. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, selfishly, as a brand strategist, yes, but I have data to back it up too. So
share that with us.
Yeah. So, you know, I think in marketing school of the past, and we all know that repetition, it takes our customers a while to get to know us and to build up that know, like, and trust factor. When I was in school, they said you had to have 7 touch points to get that know, like, and trust factor, and to have somebody maybe even take an action. Well, I've been saying for the last couple of years that, man, it's got to be like triple that because of how noisy it is. You know, I mean, even I live in Arizona, and for some time here, the gas stations have ads running while you're pumping gas. Like, we are inundated with advertising messaging at every moment of the day, whether it's on digital marketing channels like your social media, or it's still direct mail, still gets really a lot of action and activity, especially for some clients that we work with. But now recent data shows 21 times just to have that memorability. And so I think where I see brand come in is your brand is that consistent message that it's even subliminal. I have been really personally into neuroscience and quantum physics. I won't get too nerdy, but a lot about our brains and learning a little bit more about the subliminal messaging there. What I recently clicked for me is I've been doing that professionally for over a decade because of the branding work, the colors that we use, the words we choose, and even the fonts. They tell our customer something about the brand, the business, about ourselves before we even open our mouths, before they even click play on a video, before they even read information that is on a direct mail piece that comes to them. They're going to get a vibe and an understanding of the kind of brand, whether they feel like they can trust the brand or not, because of those receptors in our brain that are already interacting with the content that's there on the page before they even read the copy. And so I think that makes branding even more important, because if we're scrolling on social, say, or just going about our day, that brand can speak to us and kind of start to plant the seed, even in a really busy and noisy marketing world.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think some of the most common misconceptions are when it comes to building out a brand strategy?
The biggest one is focusing on your competition first. I actually, in the work that I do with clients, we have a gut feel of the competition. It's not like we're going to make you an exact replica, but I want to focus more on what makes your business and that brand unique versus what the competition is doing, because I think then we can get a little bit too much in comparison, and that doesn't serve us as humans, and it sure doesn't serve our businesses either, because we can end up kind of what we were talking about at the very start. You get so caught up on, oh, what's the competition doing, or what's that huge brand doing? And it might not actually work for your audience. And so I love to dig into the data first, understand your audience, and then we'll gut check and check with the competition too, or, overall industry stats. I've been doing this for 14 years. So a lot of that comes innately to me, but we focus on the competition last. And I think a lot of people think they have to look at what the competition's doing first. And I think that's the worst way to go.
I love that you said that, because I have to tell you, in my own experience, when I don't want to say ignored competitors, but just knew of them, knew what they did better than me, knew what they did worse than me, but didn't really focus on them. It weren't my starting and ending point of, everything I did during the day. Everything went much better, and it goes way past marketing. It's also in your products development, your solutions that you provide, the support you provide. When these businesses start focusing in on their competitors, it's like they almost think they have to do this, and then they have to do this, and then they have to do this. And then they're the exact same. There's no differentiation at all.
Yeah. Then you just blend in with everybody. And I think I'm reminded of, I can't remember the listener that you called out, but doing it your way. If you focus on your audience, that is the best way to win. And that it's a long game. It's the best way to really build a connection and to build up that know, like, and trust factor, which we know is the name of the game with all things marketing. But that way you can really be authentic and you do stand out. If you're focused on the competition, you're just going to do exactly what they're doing. And you're probably going to blend right in and not be memorable, not have a great customer experience, which if you're selling a high ticket item like an automobile, you got to have a good experience, especially when somebody can go online and buy from and have a really just hands-off, really neutral experience. You're maybe not going to get the best price out there. You want to make it the best wholesome experience. That has to be authentic to your business and your brand. Because if you focus on the competition, you're just going to get lost in the crowd.
Even if you focus in on best practices. And so I think it's important to know what those are, but the reality is everybody's copying best practices.
Yeah.
So pretty soon it goes right back to what you just said. Everybody's the exact same. There is no way to rise above all the noise and I guess confusion out there.
Yeah.
If there is
exactly.
any, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I am a big believer in looking at big brands, other industries, especially, and looking at, wow, I really enjoyed the way I was treated there, or I like that process, or I like that approach to something, or I like that marketing technique, or whatever it might be. And I'm always thinking, could that work for my businesses, right? And can I integrate that, and how would my customers like that? But at the same time, I do agree with you. It's not, one size fits all. What works for bigger brands may not work for you. So, but how do you know when it's right to take and when it's right to ignore?
I am a big gut feel person. So a lot of times I know, and I think we all do if we really can take a moment. But I think that inspiration from those bigger brands, yes, all the time, right? I mean, some of the most successful, the biggest night in marketing for the Super Bowl ads, there are a lot of those fun, really attention grabbing things that you can pull into your business. But there has to be that lens or that criteria. And really, I think that's where your branding, your brand mission, your vision, the values of your business, what sets you apart, like that foundation, that's the lens you have to look at all those through. And that's really where you can get that gut check for the brand of, is this really right for the business or not? Because what works for GoDaddy in an ad, or even another competitor in one of their ad placements, it might not work for you. But if you don't have that North Star and that foundation of what's important for your business, what is that positioning for your business, then you're just going to be throwing spaghetti on the wall. I'm all for trying different things, I should say, because I think we have to, especially in the digital marketing realm, where there is that instant gratification of knowing if it's working or not with the instant data, unlike an ad campaign where you might have to wait a quarter to get the full results, or, to get the ratings and all those different pieces and to see how it's performing in the market. That's one benefit of digital, but we also have to try a lot of things. And it is, with it being so noisy, it's probably not put all your eggs in one basket either. And so now I'm getting a little scattered because this part excites me a lot. But I think if you don't have that North Star and that foundation for the brand, it's really hard to test things and to take that inspiration from a competitor or from a national brand that's in a totally different industry, because you don't have that checks and balances of, is this right for my business?
So first off, I got to warn you right now, you are not allowed to get scattered on here, because if you get scattered, we're in big trouble, because I really get scattered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that you brought up GoDaddy. I think one of the brands out there that's very aspirational. Everyone loves Apple in the sense that, right? Oh, but the reality is how they market themselves. Especially if you're a small company, it's not going to work for you, because you don't have they have a big budget to be able to,
it's like they have all those zeros to work with. Yeah.
And create that feel, right? And so if you can't have the repetition and the frequency, you're never going to be able to create that with one or two things here and there. It just doesn't work. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. I think we can take inspiration from those brands. And I think I always consider, and one of the things that I say often to clients is, your brand is about feelings and data, but it's not about your feelings. It's about your customer's feelings. So if that feeling that we want our customer to have when they're interacting with us, maybe say the way that we might feel when we interact with something from Apple, or another big brand, depending on how that resonates for you, we can think about those feelings and then take it a step further and see what works for you. But we don't have as many zeros in the budget to work with and to make the kind of impact that a huge brand is. And so that's why I think even me saying not to look at those bigger brands and to hold ourselves to it, because we just can't have the same kind of impact for a brand that's been around for as long as Apple has been, in this example, has the budget that they do for advertising, and also the product lineup too. I think a lot of smaller businesses don't have the same kind of inventory to work with, and the movement and kind of the whole, those different pieces develop over time. And yes, a really unique founder adds to that, and the products themselves that people love. I remember, the days where you couldn't just get the new phone when it came out. There was that demand. There was always that. I didn't have an Apple until like the Apple 7 or the iPhone 7. So I had a MacBook, but I did not have an iPhone. And there was a lot of feelings around that because of the culture of Apple wanting to be a part of it and how it makes you feel. But that develops over decades. So I think there's other ways that small businesses can do that. Maybe it's even in your experience in location of how you're helping your customers make a purchasing decision, or that differentiator for your products and service, and how that comes together where you can be inspired by Apple, but you're just not going to have the same breadth or coverage for your campaigns because of the budget alone.
All right. So let's get more specific in the sense that, all right, you're a business, you've got clients out there that might have smaller audiences, whether that's on social or just their customer base, client base, whatever that might be, their market. what are some of the specific, or how would you tailor marketing strategies to specific businesses, or what have you done in the past where you saw really good results out of? What are some of the things that do work?
Well, and again, it's not one size fits all. So this answer is going to be different for everyone listening, but that's actually the part of what I do and have done over the last 14 years that I love the most, because we do get to take inspiration from some of those other brands, but always looking at it through the lens of your business, your audience, your customer, and your data. So even if you have no digital marketing presence set up, we still have industry data and industry markers we can go off of. But I think that looking at that and having that deep dive first, that's what I do with all clients that I work with. I do an audit of all of their existing marketing, whether it's a print campaign, because I did a little bit of journalism and PR in my background too. So I know the longer lead times and those pieces for the traditional media. I have done some ad buys for billboards before, but there's different metrics that we're looking at. And so really doing a deep dive, what have you done before? What were some of the results that you saw? One of the tools that I love, digitally speaking, is Google Analytics, because it's free and it gives us so much information if you have a website. But really looking at that data first, looking at previous campaigns first, and most importantly, making sure that we have clarity on who your ideal customer is and getting really granular on that, because I can recommend any strategy. I could sit here and say, oh, you got to be on TikTok, but that's actually not right for every business. And just because the masses are doing it doesn't mean that you should be doing it for your business.
And let me you've brought that up now a couple times, at least 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And it's critical, but it's also, I think it's easy to understand in concept and a lot harder to do. Even when you use a lot of the tools that'll say, all right, identify the top 2 or 3 segmented type of clients and what are their personalities, what do they want to move from and towards, and all this other stuff. Yeah. So talk to us, educate us on what is the easiest way to identify who your best clients are, your ideal audience, and then really, I guess, build that profile. Yeah. What's the best way to do that?
So I'm going to talk about it in 2 ways. I'm going to talk about it for somebody who has no digital marketing presence at all, because I think that can be a really intimidating space. Like, how do I even do this? I don't have Google Analytics set up. I can't figure it out. And then I'll touch a little bit on digital marketing too, because I'm sure that that's something that we're all a little bit familiar with at this point. But I think if you are rocking it old school, a lot of, in person, maybe you do have, still some spreadsheets with customer information. The very first piece, if we're talking about your customer, I think as the business owner, even if you're in a marketing department and you're working for a business, that repeat customer. Maybe they've been doing business with you for 30 years and you still have all the print records of it, but you know who that person is. Or if you're newer to business, who is that customer that just really seemed like the perfect fit, or you had the greatest relationship, even if you're a service business, maybe it really it worked perfectly. You got great results. What did that person come to you for? And what were the key attributes? What was the problem that you solved for them? So I think even doing a little bit of analysis and a little bit of even just sitting down, writing out your top 3 clients and writing down some of the things that they needed, that you provided or that your product provided for them, you can start to kind of shape that, even if you don't have that data that the digital marketing side gives us, because that's a really easy answer. We can just look in, and see what's happening. But I think even just understanding your existing customers, that can be a really great place to start. And you don't need a lot of data to do that necessarily, but the relationship data is really important there.
I agree. Explain to me the concept of brand differentiation. How does it tie into the idea of personalized marketing?
Oh my goodness. Loaded question, but so important. I think I always see a brand as that heartbeat for the business. It's the why. It's the piece that connects a human whether you are regardless of what industry you're in, a human is making that purchasing decision and you're showing the human side of your brand. So when you have a brand and you're able to use things like color psychology and font psychology to really be intentional about the colors and the fonts that you're choosing to evoke certain emotions, that's wonderful. That helps set you apart. But I think when, a lot of industries use a lot of the same colors. I mean, and that's because certain colors are known to tell our brains that they're trustworthy or they're safe. So big tech and banking use a lot of blue, and that's intentional. Yeah. Whereas health companies use a lot of green. That's also intentional. And colors have a lot of different meanings, and I don't want to get so far into that, but I think a lot of times when we think of brand, we think of the color, and there's a layer of that with your message too. So I think the differentiation isn't just based on the color, but it's the first thing we think of a lot of times. But I think then the words that we choose, and even I think for those who maybe you have a brick and mortar location, a physical location, how your sales team is interacting with your customer says a lot about your brand too. And so it's so many different touch points, and it's that consistency over time, whether it's the color in your logo, which is giving your customer a vibe about your business before they even do business with you,
right?
Or how they're interacting in a sales experience, or maybe a potential sales experience if it wasn't a good experience. That's information too. But that all leads to branding, and it all leads to that person's feeling on your business, which I think is the most important piece of brand and brand differentiation, because it helps you stand out from the crowd if you can have a human experience, but also make a connection and feel like you really can trust that they're going to give you the best product or service, whatever industry you're in. So I think that that's kind of the biggest piece there, is that feeling and the different ways that we can bring that to the surface.
As I listen to you, I'm sitting here thinking, even if someone isn't intentionally branding and has a strategy, whether you like it or not, you're branding.
Oh yeah.
And
even in your personal social media account, you have a brand. I hate to tell you.
That's right. So I was sitting here, if you don't have a strategy, and you brought up, I'm glad you brought up, like say a brick and mortar, and it doesn't have to be, it could be just a customer, client service rep on the phone. It doesn't, or even just answering something online.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance, because you've brought up the fonts and the colors, you've brought up the message, and you've brought up how we interact, how we represent, right? What's the importance of all of those aligning, and what happens if they don't?
So I'm going to answer the don't first. I always say confused customers don't convert, because I think especially with so many marketing messages being received, we need that consistency. Think about any friendship that we develop or a relationship, maybe early on. You got to get to know that person, and hopefully you're looking at actions, not just the words. And as a brand, your actions are those customer interactions. It could be a comment on social media. It could be a physical experience, a conversation on the phone. It might be your logo. It's probably not as much your logo subconsciously for your consumer as it is those other human interactions too. But I think when we have, as a consumer, and I'm sure anyone listening, no matter what the dollar amount of an item you've purchased is, if you're considering purchasing something and you have kind of a weird experience on the phone, or maybe you had an issue. I mean, I have dogs. Maybe you had an issue where the dog didn't like something and you try to take it back and it's a hassle. You're probably going to have a different flavor in your mouth for that business for the future, and go somewhere else that makes it a lot easier. And so I think those negative experiences, same reason why negative reviews end up being the loudest online on things like Google My Business or Yelp, because people remember, and our brains, our human brain is wired to remember a little bit more of the negativity. And also we're more compelled to share that negativity, and that is the side of those reviews. But the interesting of that and the flip side of that is those positive experiences build so much trust, where one negative experience breaks it, and they might go to the competitor regardless of, what other decisions you're making or what else you're offering, because you broke that trust from that negative experience.
How many positives does it take to overcome the negative, you think?
Man, I don't have any. I don't have
I'm
any
not. It's
official.
not a trick question.
I
I
don't
don't
have
know
any
the
official
official
data
answer.
on that. I think that's probably consumer dependent, and I think because our perspective is shaped by our experiences, either in our family units or from other purchase behavior, consumer experiences. I think that likely is shifting. Now I'm curious. I'm going to look into see if there is any data on that after our conversation today. But just like with a relationship, with a friendship over time, it takes a while to build that trust. That's the same thing with a business. So it's going to take a lot of that consistency over time to build that trust. It's almost like the opposite of the Groupon effect. If you have a business and you go on Groupon, somebody's coming, they just want the deal. That's like they're looking on Google. They want the quick, whatever it is near me. Maybe they have a flat tire and they need to come in right away. They need something close in proximity, but they might not be a customer for life. But if you make that connection first, then you develop a relationship. You're going to be more loyal to that in the long term, even though it takes longer to build.
I don't know why this popped into my head, but we were talking about reviews. It's not too much different than when you're walking down the sidewalk and you're thinking about, should I go into this restaurant or not? And, it's either got the A in the window for, clean.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have you ever seen a C?
I don't think I have, but I wouldn't know because I haven't gone into a C restaurant, right?
I've walked by. I didn't eat there, but I've seen a C in the window.
Good
and
information.
I gotta tell you a good story here. So I live in Louisville,
Yeah.
right? And the hometown team here is the Louisville Cardinals, which everyone just says the Cards.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the A is in the big green letter, right? Because we all have seen that. Everyone's seen that. Well, the C is a big red letter.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Which is also the color of the Louisville Cardinal team.
Yeah.
So this guy printed, because they're 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper, right?
Yeah.
He printed in the same font, in the same size, the ARDS, and put it up so it said Cards.
Oh man. I mean, brilliant. And also I would run away and never want to go in, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, but that popped into my head when we were talking about reviews. My gut tells me that if I have one negative review, I better have a minimum of 10 positives.
Yeah.
Right? To overcome. I would think it has to be at least that.
I would think so. And I think it also is probably industry specific. I would maybe rank like a doctor's office differently than like an auto repair shop or a restaurant too. If there's like 5 questionable comments or lukewarm comments for a doctor's office versus 5 for a restaurant, I might give more grace to the restaurant. Hey, we've all seen some really rude people in restaurants, but if a doctor has like a 3-star rating, I might not want to go to that doctor for whatever ailment I have. I might wait a little bit longer to go to a different doctor. So I think it also depends on industry a little bit too.
Yeah. What are some of the most innovative or unconventional type marketing techniques that you've seen, especially in like niche markets?
Man, I think I would love to give you examples of all the campaigns that I've worked on over the years, but I think
well, do it.
Some of the best campaigns overall. Some of the
shamelessly
best campaigns overall,
promote.
Though, really, I love so I have a journalism background. I went to J school. And I've always loved storytelling. And so I always have a soft spot in my heart for campaigns, big or small, that tell a story and do a really good job of it. So even there was a Super Bowl commercial a couple years ago, and it was for the Google. I think it was the Google Pixel, but it was Google something. I don't even necessarily remember the brand, but they told this story of the feature for the photos, and there was this widowed guy. He was older gentleman, and he got to see pictures of his loved ones that were no longer there, and like tears are flowing. Really sweet commercial. It made me think differently about Google, even though I'm an Apple user, but it hit the heart chords. And so I think on a really big level, when we can tap into that empathy, that's amazing. I think even something like, I work a lot with health and wellness clients. I've worked a lot with auto dealerships in the past too, but I think that empathy side of things, where you can show a transformation or you can really meet your customer where they are with your messaging, I think that makes a huge difference, because you're telling your customer without telling them, I see you, I get where you're at, here's what we can do to help you. And so I think whenever we can make that really heart-to-heart connection, it makes a big difference. For some reason, this campaign just came into my mind over a decade ago at this point. I was involved in a marketing conference, and we had to put together a campaign for a local nonprofit. And it was a competition, and it was a nonprofit that provided service animals for families that had children with medical needs. It was like a special, I'm butchering the words, but a special needs dog that could tell if they were about to have a seizure or things like that. And so the campaign, they needed to bring in more funds to get more of these dogs in the program to help more families. And we created the Be a Hero campaign, and we won the competition, but that's beside the point. But because we connected with the heartstrings of being able to show the impact for the families, for the kids, for the impact it made for their lives, to be able to have these service animals to help them every day. And to have the people that were donating be able to feel like they got to be a part of that too. And so I think a lot of those campaigns that are successful, whether it's Google or a local nonprofit or even a restaurant or a car dealership, when you can involve your customer and pull up and really connect with them on a heart level, that makes you a brand, not just a business.
Did they actually run with your campaign there?
I actually don't know if they ran with it they were supposed to, but I don't know.
Because that would have been it. I would have loved to have heard, results from that. Because I agree. I think that's and then I'm curious, what were some of the other ideas that did not win?
Oh my gosh. Now you're really juggling my memory, because this was 2013 that this conference happened. I don't even know where remembering that campaign came from, but there were other ones where it was they made the dogs into different mascots and had a competition. So pick your favorite dog, but then you had to pay to, do that. And that didn't land as well. And I don't remember some of the other ones. I think that was our main competition at the time.
The hero part, it's such a good word. Yeah. It's a good word. It's what everybody wants. I mean, who would not want to be a hero, or their dog to be a hero? Yeah. Strong. How did you come up? How long did it take you to come up with it?
I think we had 30 minutes.
Oh gosh, that's great. Yeah. That probably kept you from overthinking it.
Exactly. Well, I think a lot of times as business owners, that can be our biggest roadblock, is we overthink it too much. If we can just get out of our own ways, give yourself a set time, either to think about the customers and that ideal experience that we were talking about before, or looking at your data to see those different pieces. But I think regardless, and probably the reason that campaign came into mind is we really understood that ideal customer and what would compel them to take action. And that's why we were able to make such a great campaign. So I think regardless, one of the med spas that we worked with pre-launch, we exceeded their pre-launch sales booking goal before their doors were even open by 35%, because we really understood their customer and gave, really great added bonuses. Buy now, you get a discount on a service 6 months from now, whatever it might be. But we had some of that survey data ahead of time of what was going to be most impactful to them. So I think regardless, those kind of data markers make for the best marketing messaging or campaigns that you can do as a business owner.
All right. So let's say we have a company out there, a business out there in the audience that knows their client, knows their ideal client, their right audience, right? They're smaller though. They don't have the resources that we've talked about with some of the bigger brands that are out there. They're aspirational type brands. So they got very limited resources. What advice would you give them to help them emphasize what makes them unique so they can really stand out against everyone else?
Well, I love being scrappy, so I love this question. I think first and foremost, remember what your business is all about. Really, it's amazing to know who your ideal customer is, but take it a step further. I'm glad you have the clarity on who your customer is. So many business owners don't, or they think they do, and it's not who their marketing messaging is attracting, which we could do a whole different podcast on that. But I think that's amazing. But taking it a step further to think about the problem that they have, and then how your business, the next step from there is how your product or service helps them. Think about that help. Because I think so often we get caught up in thinking our product or service is the best, thinking, oh my gosh, this color really matters. This really matters to our customer, but we don't even ask our customer. So I think, you can know your customer, but maybe not even know what's most important about their experience with your brand. So if you don't have that context too, asking that, and then looking at your business through that lens of like, what's going to matter most to them? Because we're all human. We're all out here wanting to know what's in it for us. And your customer is no different. They're probably even more discerning because they're looking at investing money to purchase your product or service. And they want to know that it's really going to have the impact for them that they want. So if you can really, I have a theater background too. And I always think it makes me a great marketer because I can really think about the character, your customer, and have some fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think when we can really get out of our own way, not overthink it, but really just think about, maybe even some of those testimonials that you've received from customers. Hopefully you're collecting them. But what was the difference for them? Because I think when we hear it in our customers' words, it sometimes answers some of those marketing questions or pieces that are missing too, because they've already told us what the transformation they felt was from the product or service. We then can leverage that for marketing. So I think being able to really look at it through that lens of who is my business? Whether you have your mission and vision and values written down, there are probably core pieces, especially if you are a scrappy business owner wearing all the hats. There are pieces of your business. It's probably the reason you started your business, that why to begin with, what you saw was missing in the marketplace, why you said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this better, even if there's a lot of competition out there. Looking at that why too, and then pairing that with what matters the most to your audience, that's going to make for a magical and successful marketing campaign more often than not, because you're having that compassion and that empathy first.
I'm writing some things down. I'm writing some new questions down.
I love it.
As you said, how important is it to speak the client's or prospects' language? And what I mean by that is using their words, their definitions of, how they might describe stuff.
I was like, I think we all can fall into the trap of using jargon, phrases that maybe our customer doesn't understand. Yeah. And I think it goes back to that consistency piece. We've all been in a doctor's office and they're using some fancy term. And we're like, can you just speak English to me? Tell me I'm a fifth grader. And so I think it can make us feel really not connected, or maybe we don't belong, or maybe it isn't the company for us. So I think using that language that our customer uses is so important. And a lot of times, especially if you're the business owner, it's probably not the language that you use every day, unfortunately. Yeah. I fall into it sometimes too, right? Talking about color psychology, and somebody's like, what the heck does that mean? And I'm like, well, our brains read colors before they even read anything on a page. But I think when we can think about what is the simplest way that I can communicate this, or what am I really getting at here? What's in it for my customer? It can really simplify the language in a way that helps your audience feel like your product or service is for them. And I think that's a crucial foundational piece for any business and any marketing plan, because if somebody feels like it's not for them, they're just going to tune you out and go to the next that does make them feel included.
You've brought up reviews a couple times, and I wrote that question down because I wanted your input, and I figured I had a feeling you'd go that direction in terms of when you bring up colors and fonts and stuff like that. I feel like I just gave you a softball on but when you think about the reviews, because you've also talked a lot about understanding who your client is.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of businesses make the mistake of only using their reviews, especially the positive ones.
Yeah.
First off, if you're getting reviews, you should be paying attention to them because they're going to tell you how to improve and what
Yes.
people like and don't like, right? But
Yeah.
we tend to only use them for social proof, the good ones,
Yeah.
social proof, and say, look at what these people are saying. But man, what a great way to understand who your ideal prospect and or client is by paying attention, one, to the positives, because you're understanding the language. You probably can find some similarities in the actual words, definitions, the language they use. You're hearing about problems you help solve, right?
Yeah.
What they like. And then at the same time, the negative ones might even be more valuable because
Oh, yeah.
they're telling you what they want to avoid, the hassles, the inconveniences.
Yeah.
This wasn't good with your process. And as long as you're true and you're committed to improving those things and you can live up to whatever marketing promise you're making,
Yeah.
your clients, the audience is telling you exactly what to promote and what to say you help avoid.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like, we don't have to overthink it at all. Just listen to what feedback you're receiving. But I think
correct.
You make an awesome point. Sometimes those negative reviews teach us the most because maybe a process isn't working, and maybe,
Right.
Maybe there is some misalignment with a team member, and maybe they're not really living the value or the mission of the brand in their interaction. Like, that's a great flag for management to have a conversation and try to improve that. But I think so often we're scared of the reviews. And I think we don't need to be, because what an amazing gift from a client or a customer, be able to know exactly what they liked, to know how they talk about it, what it was to them.
Yeah.
And then if it didn't work, oh my gosh, now you know what doesn't work too. Like, that's amazing.
Correct.
People paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to run focus groups to do the same thing. Just look at your reviews.
Yeah. And so you combine that with, say, previous transactional data and history and stuff like that. I mean, to me, that's just a gold mine. Yeah. All right. Share with us success stories. Give us some success stories that businesses where you've implemented a customized marketing strategy and the results were off the hook.
I mean,
talk to us about
I've worked with hundreds of businesses at this point, so there are a lot. Whether it was even my very first job out of college, I sold a 5-figure construction deal on Twitter, which sounds crazy, but it happened in like 2011.
I stink at Twitter. Listen, this is amazing because for me, I mean, I got rid of my profile. I had a decent following on Twitter. Now I've got like 50 people because I had to start over. But I completely got rid of it because I felt like I am wasting my time. I have to be so on. I'm heavy on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. And so it's time consuming because I'm actually the one doing it.
Different. It was different than it is now, though. I think that's another caveat. I will say.
Yeah. So I don't know either way. I felt like, and I'm talking Twitter, this is like 4 years ago.
Sure. A little bit different now still, but I think you're pointing out something really crucial that when I work with small business owners, you can feel exhausted because there's a lot of different marketing options. Like, am I supposed to be doing ads? Where am I supposed to be doing ads? Where am I supposed to be on TikTok? What's going on Instagram? What do I have to do video? And I think I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it always comes back to your audience and where they are. So if you have a younger consumer, they're not on Facebook. They might be on Instagram, but I'm talking like a 18 to 24-year-old. They're mostly on TikTok right now. Versus, somebody who's 28 to 44 might be on Pinterest a little bit. They might be on Instagram. They might be on TikTok. They might also have a time limit set on TikTok so that they're not on there all day because they have stuff to do, So I think it comes back to understanding your customer. My most proud moments for my clients have always been like one very specific moment stands out. I love what I do. I love digging into data. In my previous life as a marketing agency owner and operator and all the things, running all kinds of different campaigns, I got to wear a lot of different hats, do a lot of different things. But one of the most special times in my career was actually the pandemic in 2020, because that med spa client that I mentioned a little bit ago, they launched in October of 2019 and then had to close their physical location down months later. And not only did we help them stay in business, they have since gone on and bought a building and expanded their team, because we helped them pivot from being just a physical brick and mortar to moving up phase 2 of their business to sell their products online, and doing it quickly and implementing virtual consults so that they still had income coming in so that they could actually continue operating. And I've done a lot of really cool things. I've gotten millions of impressions for campaigns and all the things, but like that example stands out to me more because I was able to help that small business owner feed her family and take care of her team, and they're still in existence today.
So one of the things that I'm about to announce at the end of this is that we're going to be moving to rebranding the show to Business, Bourbon, and Cigars. That topic, what you just said, I want to bring you back for that show if it's okay with you.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
And I love to put you on the spot here live.
That's great.
So now you're committed.
That's good. I love it.
But the reason I want to do that is because to me, when you talk about a pivot, first off, I do believe it's easier to pivot when you absolutely have to pivot.
Oh yeah, it is.
But it's easier to commit to it. But most businesses do not manage a pivot well.
No.
So I would love to have a theme to a show where I'm talking to you and asking you exactly how you did that and what you did. So if you're willing, we'd love to bring you back.
Yeah.
Be a couple months.
I did about 24 hours of free consults with business owners all over the country to help them figure out things that they could do, whether it was a restaurant on the East Coast or a woodworker here in Arizona, all over the place, trying to just help them figure out things that they could do while everything was closed down and they had no idea what was going on. That stuff, rapid fire is fun for me. So yeah.
That is so, gosh, that's such a great thing, because I got to tell you, the Business, Bourbon, and Cigars, and you don't know the origin story to that, but it all started the same way. The exact same way. We were in the first 2 weeks when everything just kind of got shut down. And, friend of mine, Sandy Cerami, he's helped me co-host every now and then. We literally were just brainstorming, like, people don't know what to do. We need to bring people together and start talking about solutions to a variety of different topics. And we started doing that, and one thing led to another and then to another, and I'll keep it short. But now I've got a mastermind group forming, and we do these events together, Business, Bourbon, and Cigars, which is going to be a podcast now as well. So,
that's awesome.
but it's I was so happy to hear you say that. So, all right. So finally, what advice do you have for businesses? Now, I want you to summarize the whole thing for me. They're looking to break away from a one-size-fits-all marketing mentality. They want a more tailored approach. Summarize this for us. How do they do it?
Really simply, it all comes back to who your customer is. Because I think the beauty of marketing and the thing that I love about it is it's always changing. But as a business owner, that's really exhausting to keep up with. And I get that. And you don't have to be all the places. I don't want you to take out of this conversation that you need to be on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Google My Business, Snapchat. I mean, a billboard. You don't need to be all the places. Do you need to have some cross-platform exposure? Yes, but it depends on who your audience is and where they're hanging out. Sometimes you might be able to already know that. Maybe you are your ideal customer for your business, but if you aren't, which I find happens a lot for small business owners, you can easily find out a lot of times by asking. I think going back to those reviews, even just asking questions, getting to know, especially if you have you know, a less digital business, all business comes down to relationship, whether it's behind a screen on a Zoom, or if it's on in a storefront. You're getting to know people. And so you can easily get to know a little bit more about them, what they're interested in, what their needs are. And then from there, you can either work with somebody to figure out like what makes sense from a marketing perspective, or go back to your business pillars and see, you know, what's important to my business, what's important to my customer. Okay, we can make a marketing plan from there, because it very well might be that TikTok isn't right for you. Could you go viral? Sure. But is it the right audience? Maybe not. And I just think it really depends on your audience. So I think knowing them first and foremost is the biggest importance for your brand and the longevity of your business.
I could not agree more. And if you're listening to the show, understanding who your client is, what their motives are, what their desires are, what they want to move towards and away from, was a very common theme that you brought up over and over again. But you're spot on, because you can't differentiate yourself. You're never going to hit home with a compelling message, right? Unless you know what motivates them. So I love that. That is a wrap for today's episode of Move Crush Count. Incredible guest, Stephanie Riel. I'm going to just give you the nickname, even though it goes the Real Deal. All right.
Great.
So I want you to visit her, StephanieRiel.com. Riel is spelled R-I-E-L. If you're not watching, if you're watching, it's scrolling at the bottom down there, /brand dash diagnostic. And I would imagine they can go to StephanieRiel.com.
Absolutely. Learn more about me, and that links to all the things. I have some courses and DIY resources, or more information about how we could partner together. That brand diagnostic is where we deep dive into that data and give you a focused plan, which might be what some of the listeners really need. And it is so much fun for all of us, because you get clarity. I get to have fun digging into your data, seeing what's working, what isn't, and alleviating some of that pressure too. So I appreciate it.
I love it. Thank you very much for sharing with our Move Crush Count audience today. If you found this episode insightful, don't miss out on all our past episodes. You can do that by visiting movecrushcount.com. Subscribe. You can also subscribe on YouTube. That way you catch up on all the past ones and you never miss a future one. We will continue dropping episodes through September. So keep staying tuned. More importantly, you want to subscribe, because as we've mentioned earlier, we're going to be rebranding to Business, Bourbon, and Cigars. It's going to be an incredible podcast. We're going to get Stephanie on that one as well. And got a whole different topic we're going to talk about in terms of how to manage through successfully pivot your business, which I think there's a lot of businesses out there that would love to get that insight. Make sure you connect with us on Instagram. Join our Facebook group. And obviously when we live stream, whether it's on LinkedIn, this is our last live stream until September.
Wow. So
all episodes are going to be recorded from here on through September, and then we'll bring the live streams back. So you are our last. This is an honor. It's
an honor for me too. Thank you.
So thank you. I mean, I really appreciate it. It's a heck of a way to close out the show. The episode will drop obviously in September, and we'll promote that and let everybody know. But we'll have you back on Business, Bourbon, and Cigars as well. A special shout out goes out to our phenomenal sponsor, J&L Marketing, whose innovative approach helps you move the crowd, crush the competition, and count the money. You can discover their game-changing strategies at jnlmarketing.com today. Until next time, we won't see you on Move Crush Count. We will see you on Business, Bourbon, and Cigars. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.